So, my name is JC Lucille English, and I am talking about my part of collecting my data, my methods, and also some of my implications and findings. I am a student teacher in second grade at Dilworth Elementary School in the Cupertino Union School District. Much of the demographic in my class are kind of mixed boys and girls. We mainly have students whose parents or themselves are from Asia, so China, Japan, Korea. I have a student who is from Brazil, a student who is Hungarian, students who are from South Asia and India. And a lot of my students, or I'm going to say the majority of my students are multilingual, which is amazing. And most of these students have been in the Cupertino Union School District for a majority of their education. And so in the school district, something that Cupertino is known for is its rigorous instruction, so high expectations from parents and admin, the district itself, and also from parents who want their child to receive a great education. And so a lot of my students are already doing some after school programs or additional activities to help their education. Maybe it could be cultural school, like Korean school, one of my students is taking, Kumon, or other educational opportunities for them out of school. Some of my students have parents that both work, and some of them have parents who might work but also have opportunities to volunteer in the classroom throughout the week. And so that has been helpful to us and as well as for students to see. So the people involved in my study are the students in my classroom in general. There are many students who show an eagerness to learn and also challenge themselves. So if there's a new concept in math, reading, writing, students are willing to tackle it first during carpet lessons and then are able to work individually or with each other, maybe need some one-on-one help to get started. Um, but for the majority, most of them are still learning how to be responsible citizens. They are in second grade. Responsible students and citizens complete and keep track of work and also participate in the maintenance of their school and classroom. So my methods included um, making an observation and then also creating a lesson that encourages students to collaborate and reflect and also facilitate their own learning. So first, my observations were for independent work and also collaboration. So students do independent work throughout the day. First, we start off on the lesson where they collaborate with one another. They have partners or they sit with each other for turn and talks and kind of get started thinking about the lesson and the concepts that they're going to work with, and then they sit at their tables and work independently. So during independent work such as math, writing, and reading journals, usually around 17 out of 22 students are able to work independently and focus on finishing their assignments. These students might need some reminders about noise level if they're talking with each other, but are typically able to work independently um, and complete their work on time. 5 out of 22 students typically have difficulty focusing on their work when sitting next to each other or certain students and do not finish their work when required. So typically, if I notice this happening, I will check in with them, give them a reminder about what to do, or have them sit at the back table with me so that they can focus and get their work done. But typically, they don't ask for help. When moving seats or sitting at the small group with me or another teacher, like my mentor teacher, these students are able to focus on the work and do ask for help. They have me and other teachers and my mentor teacher available to them, so they will ask for help. However, if they're sitting with each other or with other certain students, they'll become distracted and also might not have much motivation to complete their work. Um, Students have a learning packet as well as a choice for free choice called Brain Boomers. This is if they are completed with the work that they need to finish. And so this is a fun way for students to learn while also providing them with different activities in their packet. During free choice time, about 7 students choose to do this packet. We don't regularly have built-in free time. However, if students are done with their assignments. Some of them, like 7 and 8 students, will want to choose this pretty regularly. Um, and if students are completed with work, they might do extension activities. I have regularly about 3 to 4 students will choose to do extension activities. This could be um, extra work in their math workbooks. It could be working on their reading journals or their writing, but most students will choose to read a book. Students also prefer to do learning math games or iReady activities on their iPads during free time if given the opportunity to. Students still engaged in a fun activity, but are still learning. And during collaboration, my collaboration observations. So during turn and talks on the carpet, most students turn and talk with a neighbor or designated partner. Depending on the subject and would discuss the question being asked or the content. After a short conversation, students would discuss something off topic. So the majority of students will turn and talk to each other about questions that I am asking them about different subjects. They'll answer it first, they'll work on communicating. Some of them will use our communication sentence frames, if also encouraged to by me or my mentor teacher. But there are times when some students, especially English learners, won't initiate the conversation or maybe won't seek out a partner if they're not sitting directly next to someone. And so after I kind of give some encouragement or hey, maybe you can talk to this person or what are you thinking? So like some prompting for me. There will be some discussion, not as much, but I will say most students are willing to turn and talk with others in the classroom. Um, and during projects or assignments where students are working with each other, most students will have a easy time getting along with each other and incorporating others' opinions and ideas into the project. They'll offer their own and listen to what others are saying and kind of work through, okay, how do we create this together? And one lesson required students to create a building for a community. And they were assigned a building, so it was a science and social studies PBL. And in science, they learned about matter and how things are created. And then in social studies, they learned about communities, parts of the communities and buildings. So school, hospital, police station, grocery store, apartment complex, and library. Students were assigned one of those, and they had access to cardboard, tape, pipe cleaners, toilet paper rolls, glue, and different color paper. They can use any of these materials, whatever they thought would be best. We gave them that option, set it out for them, and they would be able to go up and get it themselves. Most students were able to work together to create the building, incorporating each other's ideas. Some students had difficulty compromising and often stated that another student's idea was like wrong or dumb, not realistic, using a lot of that kind of language and wanted their own opinion. So I would have to step in and have conversations with that student in particular separately, and then kind of with the whole group work together about how we can resolve this, how we can compromise, and teaching about that as well. At the end of the project, each group had completed their building, which contained all the necessary details, as well as a paper that described their project. And the students needed little direction to complete this project. It was a lot of them working with each other, kind of facilitating it themselves and their own learning. They took what they learned about buildings, communities, and their own prior knowledge about what these buildings looked like, and were given about 3 to 4 days to work on it together because social studies is about 30 to 45 minutes. And so there was a lot of collaboration and talking time first and during the duration of the building. In another PBL that I created and taught on my own during my solo week, it was another science and social studies PBL. So in science, they learned about earth changes, specifically um, coastal erosion. So looking at what that looks like, a model of it. They learned how it affects communities and towns close to us because even though we're in the Bay, we are close to towns that have been affected by coastal erosion and by floods and storms. And we learned how we were thinking about ways that we could solve it because also in social studies, we were thinking about how to be a community helper, how to contribute to your community. We were looking at specific figures who did great things for their communities and for the world. And in that project, it was very similar to the other PBL that we had done prior. Students first got with a group that they haven't worked with yet. The group was a mix of students who spoke different languages. It was paired so each student would be able to kind of support each other or have a support within the group. Um, Different levels as well of reading and writing and different English levels and also a mix of boys and girls in the group. And beforehand, we had another discussion about collaboration and teamwork, how to incorporate others' ideas into the creation of the project. And so the first thing that students did was kind of plan it out. They worked in their workbook first, kind of getting started on the project, and then they created a project proposals where students talks about the problem, what was going on, which is basically coastal erosion, um, their solution idea, so creating a drawing of it, but maybe also explaining it as well. Materials that they would need. I gave them a list of materials I knew that I would have for them eventually, and then explaining why their solution would work. So they brought in their prior knowledge and they their prior knowledge and what they knew could probably work for a solution. And so they completed the project proposal together and then they worked on their model. It was like in a container with sand and clay and pebbles and tried to create a solution to stop coastal erosion. Um, and then afterwards, students reflected on the activity. This was one of the first times that these students have reflected on their work because they are in second grade. It was just three kind of basic questions. First was what went well in the project for your solution. Second was what changes could you make that could make it better next time. And then the third one was how were you being a community helper during this project? And students worked together to answer the questions and really reflected on their work. And much of the responses came back thorough, explained well. I might have needed to check in with them as they were writing it and kind of give some examples of what they could write because this was one of the first times that they had done something like this. But at the end, there was much thoughtful reflection about what they did, and they also really enjoyed the project. Project proposal and the reflection questions were ways for me to teach them metacognitive strategies, so thinking critically about what they are learning, about the problem, and their solution, and why it would work, and also practicing writing and justifying their reasons, and also just taking time to reflect on their work and specifically, what went well, what could change, and tying it all together. Or this was a way for them to help them become aware of their own thinking processes and their own learning, how they facilitated learning themselves. And throughout this project, students were pretty much able to take control of their own planning. and evaluation, which led them to really enjoy this and take a lot of time and have a lot of fun with creating the final solutions. Another thing that we have in our classrooms are our classroom is classroom jobs. So each week, students are assigned a new job. And at the beginning of the school year, when students were learning about what to do and getting used to the different jobs, it would take about 10 minutes. Students would need some redirection and assistance in completing their jobs. And by now, it only takes about 3 minutes. All students um, have a willingness to perform their job well and take the time seriously. If some students happen to not have a job for that week, they will adopt another one and help around the classroom. And I've also noticed that even during or throughout the day when there's no designated time for classroom jobs, students will take part in keeping the classroom clean and tidy and safe by picking up trash or picking up pencils, even without me or my mentor teachers saying anything. And they notice, and they often say when the classroom is tidy or not as tidy as it should be. So, in all, teaching um, activities and ways and expectations and ways for students to take part and facilitate their own learning in the classroom, um, and be responsible for the appearance of their classroom is teaching metacognitive strategies for them to continue thinking critically about their learning and to uh, be a part of their own work and what they are learning. And really, I've noticed that their motivation, their intrinsic motivation has grown for tackling new challenges, for how they approach certain activities, and as well as collaboration with others.